Welcome back to another Afterthoughts episode of Hotel Bar Sessions. I'm Rick Lee, and I'm joined as usual by with my co-hosts, joined by my co-hosts, Dr. Lee Johnson and Dr. Charles Peterson. How y'all?
Doing good, doing good. I'm doing better than Charles. He fucked around and watched the news.
Yeah, that was a bad move. That was just really not the smart move. And before I went to bed.
Oh,
that's the worst time.
It was an emotional sort of like double stuffed cheese burrito at midnight.
Yeah, Charles, watch some Mannix before you go to bed. That'll be great. So today we're talking about our what we thought we said, what we should have said, what we wanted to say, or just things that occurred to us in relation to episode 25 on guns, episode 26 on music, and episode 27 on the hustle. So let's start with guns. Lee, what are you thinking about guns now?
I mean, I'm still repeal the Second Amendment. I will say that after getting several messages, mostly through Twitter, let me just be 100% clear that I was mistaken in saying AK-47 when I should have said AR-15. Like maybe I should just leave it at that. That's all I have to say. What about you, Charles?
I realize, and I confront what I think I described it as the antinomy in terms of sort of the tradition of Black sort of self-defense using guns over and against, ultimately the futility, just, the great sort of apocryphal line, always outgunned, always outmanned. That's right. And so
that was my dog.
This is going to be something I probably struggle with for a very long time in terms of trying to think through it, trying to understand a way out of this sort of this paradox. But it's emotionally exhausting to think about, but it's a necessary commitment that I have to have. So thank you for sort of the conversation that allowed me to realize that I'm struggling with that.
Yeah, and Charles, you sort of got me to see through that episode, well, two things. One thing is, I would like to apologize that in having listened to a number of episodes now, you have consistently used the phrase people of African descent living in the United States. And I have not picked up on that. And I just want to acknowledge the power of that phrase because I think I should have recognized the problem with other locutions that I had been using. And so I learned that also in the guns episode. Related to that, I think, and this goes back to some of the things we've talked about offline as well. I start thinking about the question of nonviolence and think about and put that in the context of cui bono, like who benefits from nonviolence. And maybe it's time to think about a lot more political, social, and ethical issues in terms of, well, if it comes to it, when do we throw down? And I think the guns episode got me to see kind of that antinomy. I don't have a solution for it. I don't like, open warfare in the streets.
Right.
But I think it's a question. And I've been thinking a lot about that since the guns episode. After all that, it seems now a little ridiculous to say, and Charles, what about music?
Well, I love that episode. I love all of our episodes, but the music one was really fantastic. And I like the fact that we managed not just to descend into, oh, my favorite song is this, and who's your top 3 soul singers, right? Which I was afraid it was going to become, and it didn't. So I'm very proud of that. But what I do regret about the music episode is the Lee recorded her singing, right? So we're discussing with Rick, demonstrating the altar call, and Lee's making a face, really beautifully done.
Yeah.
In the original recording of it, I tried to accompany Lee and was horrible. And I wish that I actually had done a better job of providing accompanying vocals with Lee.
Here's your
So-
opportunity. Sing us a
Can I say though,
gospel song.
before that happens, and I want to hear it, but before that happens, to my mind, what was bad was not your vocals,
No.
but that Zoom had such a lag that there was no way you could be together in this.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think Lee was, like a bar or two ahead of you. And so that was unfortunate for me.
We'll have to save that
But
one.
we have the opportunity now to hear. Come on, lay it on us. I actually seriously need a gospel song right now.
Oh, I feel you. Oh, here we go. And I had smoked a cigar earlier, so I apologize.
Perfect.
Pass me not, O gentle Savior. Do not pass me by. Whilst out others thou art calling. Do not pass me by. I fucked up the lyric, but there you go.
I didn't even know.
That's so great.
That is great, Charles. Thank you.
That's actually one of my
Wait,
favorite songs.
I think I just had a strange warming of the heart.
That's not like you.
Was that the whole? Was that the Holy Spirit? Was that the Holy Spirit?
The Holy Spirit pass. Yeah, I love that. That's my favorite song. My mother, my entire life, she walked through the house. And you could tell when she's thinking about stuff, she's just like singing gospel songs and spirituals to herself. And I realized I like to walk through the house and just kind of sing, gospel and spiritual songs as well.
This will come as a surprise to both of you, I'm sure, but I like to walk through the house singing show tunes.
Well, I actually have a response to both of you. First to Charles, which is that after that episode, I realized that in the shower, I'm assuming we all sing in the shower, but in the shower, most of the songs I sing in the shower are gospel songs.
Yeah.
So which is weird. I don't think that I would have ever had occasion to notice that, except for that we had just had this long conversation about music. So it is interesting to me, even now, what a deep part of myself is connected to that, that my roots in the Christian church and in gospel music. So
well, you're a PK, of course. I mean, you sound like me. I went to church as a child, probably from 7:30, 8 in the morning until evening broadcast, at least for the first 7 or 8 years of my life.
Yeah.
We were always in church, so I like the fact that as I get older and in my sort of unconscious moments, that's where I return to. Outside of the ideology, but in terms of the ritual, that's where I return to.
Yeah, absolutely. And just in relation to being a PK, I will also say, funny story, until I was age 5, I thought that everybody's house was called a parsonage. I just thought parsonage was a name for a house. I didn't even know that it was thought everybody lived in a parsonage. Anyway, but to Rick's point about musicals, this is something that really came up to me afterwards. I also really love musicals, and I wish we had actually talked more about what the power of musical theater is in particular. I don't know if anybody has seen this. I'm kind of surprised that I didn't have this as one of my raves this season, but I've been watching the Apple TV series Schmigadoon, which is this fantastic parodic send-up of musicals. It features who is it? I know Cicely Tyson is in it, or I think that's her name.
Cecily Strong. Cecily Strong.
Cecily Strong, yeah. Keaton Michael Peel. No, Keaton. I always get Keaton Michael Wayans.
He's Key. He's Key.
Is he Keenan?
It was Key and Peele.
Right.
Jordan
but his name was Keaton Michael Keys, right?
I don't know. I didn't watch.
At any rate,
I thought it was a Dave Chappelle knockoff.
It has a ton of celebrities in it. But what is great about it is it tells this story. It's like an imaginary story about these regular people who stumble upon this town in which everything is a musical. And it is particularly great for fans of musical theater because every single episode is a kind of send up of a particular musical. And it's just so well crafted and so well done. And yet, and even though it's a parody, and even though it's meant to sort of point out the ridiculousness, the theatricalness, the, you know, hyperbolic nature of musical theater emotions, one of the great things that I find about it is that it's still really deeply emotional. Like I still find myself, even though these are parody songs, I still find myself being like, yes, I'm inspired, or yes, I'm sad, or, you know, whatever, like you're
Because
supposed to feel.
one thing they capture really well is that, you know, people who don't enjoy musical theater are like, nobody goes around, you know, singing all the time. But what they don't see is that people in musicals break into song when the emotion is so much it can only be expressed in song. And I think Schmigadoon actually kind of captures that, even though, as you said, it's a parody and so on. They get the right moment, I think.
I also neglected to mention in the music episode, because we did not talk about musical theater, but I actually had it in my notes to talk about for the music episode, which was that my absolute favorite musical piece of all time, musical theater piece of all time, is the Pirates of Penzance. Which, if I had the gumption to do, I would require my students to watch every time I teach Kant. It's the literal greatest send up of Kantian morality ever. But I guess I'm just not that sadistic, so I don't do that. But what about you, Rick? What did you regret not saying in the music episode?
Well, I with you, musical theater, I wished had come up more. Yeah, I think that's mostly it, because like I did talk about this, the feeling of being overwhelmed by, like, even I think I mentioned Pitch Perfect, and like when they're on, like it just
No,
makes,
it was Sister Act.
Oh, Sister Act, right.
Yeah.
But also Pitch Perfect. But like when they're on, just there's something that just moves me. And Charles in that episode kept using the word transcendence there, and I think you have to say something like that, if not transcendence, something very close. Yeah, and then the hustle. Charles.
Y'all just go ahead. I'm going to do the hustle while you're talking.
I feel like I want to say maybe I was a little harsh on our man from Detroit.
DJ.
Yeah, I feel like I was a little harsh. So I probably want to dial it down to 8 and 7. My criticism and my concern about the world that it seems he's very comfortable sort of like living in and perpetuating. And on top of that, I wish that in terms of talking about hustle, that we had talked more about sort of the type of hustle where people like are doing those 2 or 3 jobs. Like, because we did talk about sort of gig work, but I mean, there's that old school hustle where, like, my dad was an example. My father had a job. I hope this doesn't mess up his retirement. He had a job with the post office and would work 10 to 6 in the morning, get off at 6 o'clock. At 7 o'clock, he was a caseworker for a welfare office. And he literally had that second hustle, second full-time job for 10 years. You know, but that was such a common, regular sort of aspect of the people I knew and grew up with, right? Like that as the hustle versus, you know, I'm con artist, or sort of like it's a Ponzi scheme, or I'm doing crimes. But this were people sort of who trying to squeeze every single possibility out of a capitalist sort of economic system, but still remain in the lines, right? In a sense, people who really, really believed, right, in these quote unquote conservative American values of thrift and hard work and pulling oneself by one's own bootstraps, or taking full advantage of opportunities before them. Because in a sense, that was a freedom as well, to be able to have access to that second job, to have
Right.
the resources
right.
to create for one's or maintain for one's family. Because my family comes out of sort of the Cotton South for the most part, and opportunities for other sort of like sources of income and revenue were just really not there, or were being controlled in such a way by the dominant figures within your society, right? So I wish we had talked more about that.
Yeah.
Lee, what about
I'll
you?
just say, yeah, I'll just say that when I listened to it back, I was unhappy with how unconditionally I praised my respect. I mean, how unconditionally I stated my respect for the hustle. So I do think that I want to be clear that I am not pro sociopath, and or so
Not pro sociopath, not a robot. Anything else you want to declare?
Yeah, so
that's a bold stance, Lee.
Still anti Second Amendment, but which is with my not pro sociopath. But let me just say that I think that maybe if I could just reframe that claim that, so I'd said many times that I respected TJ, the rapper, the Scam with the Beat guy, that there was something about that kind of a hustle that I respected. And I just want to put it in the correct frame, that I wanted, what I was meant to say was that in a game that's already rigged, I feel like I have a respect for people who find a way to beat the game. And I say this, by the way, because I just last weekend went to the fair and won one of the Midway games, right? Which are all rigged games.
I wish you could show that. I wish you could show the picture of that damn.
I wish I could. I'll put a link to it in the notes to this Afterthoughts. But in a game where everything is already rigged, I feel like I feel like this is the poker player in me, right? Like I respect a well-played game in the context of the game. And poker. It seems like one of the things that I do believe that we effectively articulated in that episode was that we're all playing a rigged game, that this is the conditions that we're in under capitalism. And so, but I did want to kind of clarify that when I say I respect the hustle, I don't want that to extend to, actually causing harm to other people or an endorsement of being, deceptive writ large or anything like that.
Yeah. I just follow up on that, because that's something I've been thinking a lot about, that, I thought we broached the subject of the relationship between the hustle in the sense of these sort of criminal enterprises and so on, and then gig work also as a kind of hustle. And to pick up what Charles afterthought about this episode, what I started thinking about was, okay, my dad had 2 jobs for most of his life as well too. And there is a kind of hustle there, and that should be honored, like the amount of work and the sort of leaving your family behind just in order to make it so that your family can have, not just survive, but maybe have something like a decent life. What happens then in the moment where those opportunities for, let's call it, honest work are no longer available?
Right.
And they're no longer available because, as Lee was saying, the game is rigged. And once the game is rigged, I don't think I really blame someone for taking what they can get. Again, I don't know that I could carry out this argument consistently, but I do think there is a difference between some of the sociopaths in that series and some of the other people. And I think maybe I'm just thinking of TJ, who are really just, I think, making what they can out of a situation that gave him no opportunity whatsoever.
Sure, making a way out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Although it is interesting to really think seriously about when the game is rigged, is it also the case that saying that you respect something, like respect is entirely evacuated of content, right? Like in a rigged game, to say I respect your game, like what does respect even mean in that
Right,
context?
right.
You know, so anyway.
So Lee, the poker player, and you likes, a successfully carried off bluff, but not a cheater.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. If you've got a gun under the table or an ace up your sleeve, I do not respect you.
Hashtag repeal the Second Amendment.
hashtag anti-sociopath.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. That Lee is making a bold stake against sociopathy.
That's right.
I just want to stand out for my co-host, like as the one person here who is bold enough to say that I am anti-sociopath.
Do we want to make absolutist claims about sociopathy? Don't we want to maybe explore the nuances?
Yes, we do.
I do regret, though, that we missed an opportunity to risk the ire and legal sort of antagonism of HBO. If we could have gotten a sound clip of Mr. Omar saying, "Don't hate the player, hate the game." And I'm sorry we didn't get that.
You know what, Charles? I promise you right now, we're going to find a way to get that clip in a future episode. Before the season is over, we will have that clip in an episode.
We should think about revisiting one of these topics as one of the episodes next season. Let's revisit something that we feel like we still have more to say about.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, so we'll have one more of these Afterthoughts episode dealing with the last 3 episodes of the season. So stay tuned to this channel for that. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Lee. And I'll see you soon.
All right. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.